It worked. Look at that. That's the first time I've ever been able to do that, where we have like a group of people all come up. I like that. All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome. Thanks for joining us here today. We probably got a few people like slowly filtering in as we get started. So we'll give that a 30 seconds, a minute before we get going. If you are joining us live, fantastic. Thank you for being here. Drop it in the chat where you're coming in from, just so we have an idea. We do like to know. I'll give a proper introduction in a minute here, but my name is Justin. I work on Balto's marketing team. I'm coming in from the St. Louis, Missouri region. Claudia, you're coming out of the Chicago region, so yes. Midwest represent. And Christina, you are not. So, whatever. Okay, let's see here. Cool, give that a few more seconds. If you're joining us and this is the first time being here, thank you. We do have a chat. We would love for you to drop in there. Like I said, let us know where you're coming in from. We have a Q&A tab. That way, if you want to ask a question that we can answer later on, hit that up there. But yeah, overall, you know what? I think let's go ahead and dive in. Is this going to work? Where's my screen? Not what I wanted. 1 second. And there it is. Hey, that's what we needed. Okay. So what we are talking about today is some of the traits that make a high-performing team when you are starting to look at using AI in your contact center. Where this came from was I went to all the CSMs here at Balto and was like, hey, what's the stuff that actually makes this worthwhile? We got a bunch of great answers. We synthesized it all down and we figured out there were like 5 common traits among all of them that really kind of spell this out. So to help me talk about those today, first, we're going to formally introduce Christina Knoll. She is the Director of Customer Success here at Balto. And I also have with us Claudia Ferguson, a Senior Customer Success Manager. Personally, thank you both for being here, just for A, joining me on this to help talk about this, and B, both for like the response that you gave to help put this together. It was incredibly helpful. So excited to have you both here.
Of course. Thanks for having us.
Okay. Let's go ahead and get right to it. So one of the things that we talked about, this is me and the CSMs, when we are talking about what makes an organization ready and primed for AI. Because what we end up seeing a lot of times is people come in, and obviously AI is a huge buzzword, has been for a couple of years now. People come in and they're like, I want AI. I want it for my contact center. It's going to make everything better. It's going to make everything great. And we're like, okay, cool. We like that. We can help you with that. But there are common things that make that transition and the integration go smoother. It helps get success. It helps get that ROI faster. I know that these are just buzzwords, but there are tactical examples of this where we know that if you have some of these areas, it's going to make it better. The very first one, and I am very serious when I say this was in every single response that I got from every single CSM, is having engaged in hands-on leadership. What that looks like is having supervisors who oversee a manageable number of agents that allow for targeted coaching. I know that that's probably common in general, regardless if you're using AI or not, but it does lend itself tremendously to this. And the second piece of this is like managers willing to use AI insights to drive performance through challenges, through contests, through incentives, that kind of thing. So Claudia, when we were talking before we got started here, you had mentioned that you had a group of customers that you were thinking about ahead of the webinar here that had like some good examples for this kind of thing. Can you share one of those like in this example now?
Yeah. So this one is so important because AI is really great at gathering insights, sifting through large amounts of data, doing the legwork to find that coachable moment. But what it can't do is it can't close the loop. You need to have a focused supervisor who knows their team well and knows how they best take feedback in order to actually implement that insight. So having engaged in hands-on leadership is absolutely pivotal in order to make your AI tool successful in that manner.
Got it. Christina, what do you think? Same thing, different opinion? Where you at?
I completely agree. I think one thing that's kind of really special with AI generated insights is it's great for those coaching opportunities, making sure your team is staying compliant, using the rebuttals that you have determined either through the AI generated insights or from your experience of like how to best handle those objections, what rebuttals work really well, being able to take the things from your best agents and scale it out to everyone. So, I have one organization that is a home improvement organization where they're booking appointments for their team to go out and actually, do the install. And their big focus is making sure they're setting quality appointments, that they're setting expectations. And so it's really important for them to be able to have the best ways to handle that and really get that out to the team. So AI is able to generate what are the best practices, where are those opportunities to get everyone to the same level. Like that company, they noticed from working with Balto and being able to actually implement those insights to their team that it was no longer the 10% of their top booking 80% of their appointments. It was 80% of their agents booking 80% of their appointments. So they're able to get the center of that bell curve, moving that forward is going to make the biggest impact. And the way that you do that is being willing to use those insights and those best practices, but really communicate that to the agents and hold them accountable, have that targeted coaching. And the last thing I'll add is like, it's great for best practices, coaching, compliance that we kind of just mentioned, but it's also really great for positive reinforcement. Oftentimes in your contact center, you have your agents that are doing a lot of great things, but we're often focused on where is the coaching, where can they be better? And so AI generated insights can also really highlight what your agents are doing really well and allow you to provide that positive reinforcement. Hey, I saw on this call, you had amazing active listening. You asked great discovery questions. And so I like to think of it like it was also, that positive reinforcement is so important in addition to having those more like coaching and compliance support to your team as well.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. There's one thing I want to touch on. Like you mentioned this a bit ago, Christina, when talking about like moving that bell curve with these organizations. Again, kind of like I said at the top, we already know that like, hey, having a manageable number of agents, regardless if you're using AI or not, that's probably a better practice in general if that's feasible within your organization, because that allows you to be more hands-on. It allows you to give more attention to those kind of people. It just gets you better results in general. So then that translates into whenever you're onboarding in any kind of software, whether it's AI or any kind of new tool in general, is trying to move that bell curve all that more difficult than whenever somebody comes in and they have pretty large, pretty unwieldy teams under one manager. And then has there been a time, at least with Balto, where we're like, okay, we need to scale this down to actually make this worthwhile? And if we can't, how do you make that transition? And I'll leave that out to both of you. That's a tough one.
Yeah, definitely. Like when I will start working in an organization and they have a ton of agents that don't have a direct supervisor, it's still possible. It's just, oftentimes the best practice is like sometimes people need to like hear and engage with something 7 times before it becomes a habit. And so agents often do need that like reminder, that reinforcement. With our real-time guidance tool, we're able to provide that, without having that hands-on management support. So there is some ways that you can still do it, but when we really see the biggest impact is when there's a direct supervisor with a handful of agents to report directly to them, so that supervisor can regularly pull these insights and coach and support their team, and have that positive reinforcement and also that like repeated reminders, because it does take a few of those times to really make that behavior change. And so if you only have one supervisor for like 50 agents, you're not going to have that opportunity as often to have that reinforcement and have that ability to really see that impact change directly with one individual agent.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. I think that dovetails really nicely with like the next point that we want to get into here. So talking about structured QA and coaching processes. Again, these are we're talking about qualities that if you have these in your contact center before onboarding an AI tool, whether it's Balto or anything else, you're probably going to get a little bit better success out of it. Again, this really ties into what we've just already been talking about. If you have a clear QA workflow, such as scorecards, a set number of calls, scored per agent each month, if you have an established process of turning QA insights into coaching opportunities, that's probably going to go better. We had an on-site recently with Balto, and I heard this a lot. Coming from people of saying like that's one of the biggest hiccups that people will run into is where you come in with this QA process, this kind of loose, kind of undefined, and then having to then narrow that into a more defined setting can be difficult oftentimes. Claudia, does that match with your experience? Do you feel otherwise? What does that look like?
Yeah, I would say it mostly matches. I don't think it's a make or break, however. I think that if you come in with this, your team can more quickly get to the part of, okay, cool, our AI has automated our QA process and it is taken over the mundane tasks of checking the boxes, going through calls, flagging compliance items, and they're more quickly reallocating their QA analyst time into higher level thinking, creating those QA infractions into coachable moments and getting them into the hands of supervisors to do coaching. So again, you're just more quickly moving to that point, which is of course the end goal of powering your QA process with AI. But if you don't have that coming in, that's okay. You'll just have to spend a little time of defining what are those quality metrics in a call you're looking for, and delivering it to your AI solution. And then from there, you'll be off to the races. But if you already have that, we can move so much quicker and get you to the point of you're reallocating time and resources.
Yeah. That again, like I said, I feel, Christina, actually, I feel like I heard that from you specifically at the on-site. I could be wrong, but I know that again, this was a common topic in general.
Yeah, absolutely. I think with anything, like obviously change management is a whole like industry and practice for a reason because it can be a challenge. And so if you are coming in to a AI solution to own your QA, but you haven't really had a QA process in place, it can be a challenge for the agents to be learning this new process, knowing that their calls are going through a specific scorecard. What are they being scored on? What is their expectation? So I think a part of that, if you don't have something like that in place already, is not only like determining how you want it to work with your AI solution, but coaching and supporting your team that this is a new expectation, this is a new process, this is what this is going to look like. If you have, kind of a 3 strikes rule, what does that look like? How do you enforce that? Are agents getting bonuses and support based off of higher scores? Are they being reprimanded for lower scores? Like having that kind of culture and setup in place does take some time, and it takes a little bit for your agents to like understand that this is the new process. So I think that's something to kind of think about too, of like, if you're coming into an AI solution without having any of that, there is going to have to be some kind of internal work that you'll have to make sure your agents know what to expect, your supervisors know how to reinforce it, your QA team knows exactly what to look for. So having some of those things kind of already solidified, as Claudia said, allows you to just really jump into let's get it automated and move forward. If you don't have that in place, as she said, it's not make or break, but there's definitely going to have to be some internal teamwork that needs to be aligned before you can, just automatically turn on a new QA feature.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I'll put on my marketing hat for a moment here. I know with Balto, we have built the product, we've built a platform to where whenever you have these QA insights and they're coming to you instantly because of what we are able to do with that, that then immediately launches into like you're able to get better coaching out of that. You are seeing these results instantly. You are seeing, hey, this is what's happening on the calls right now. You can then take that and make a coaching plan, or even just go to an agent quickly and be like, hey, we saw this morning, here's a couple areas that we need to improve. Again, that is specific to Balto in particular, but this is the kind of thing that it's this larger theme of when you have these processes in place, it just helps that go that much faster. So I really think that that's a valuable place to think about it, just in my opinion. It seems like this is one of the biggest areas, like from what I've heard, both from you both, from the customer success team with Balto, and in general in the industry, this is one of the biggest areas that people can start to see results from relatively, I don't want to say quickly, but still.
I would just say if you're considering integrating a AI solution like Balto and you don't have these kind of processes in place, I think it's a good time to kind of start thinking internally of what that would look like. Doesn't, again, have to be solidified, but as you're kind of going through that prospecting process, think about how many calls would you like to coach per agent per month? If you're not doing that already, if you are, how many are you currently doing? Oftentimes before an organization moves forward with Balto, they're scoring 3 to 5 calls per agent per month. They're getting just such a small data collection of where their quality and their compliance is. And then with Balto, we can double, triple that score every sale or enrollment call. And so you're really starting to get a better idea across a larger data set of where your quality assurance is. And so I think it's just, if you are starting that process and you don't really have this set in place, kind of start to think about what would the goals be? What would an ideal situation look like? How many calls would it really be able to give you an idea of who are the agents you want to spend more time on? Who are the agents that are hitting all compliance items, but maybe we can start focusing on soft skills and better handling of objections and those types of things. So just something to kind of think about if you're thinking about an AI solution, of where your current QA process is. And if you don't have one, start thinking about what that would look like.
Yeah. No, I fully agree. That's something that we have heard for a long while. I know we did a webinar more than a year ago at this point, and a very similar line in like, hey, you need to, it was more having to do with change management, but very much in that vein of like, hey, before you like just jump the gun and you start throwing money at this kind of thing, it really is like you want to think about this and make sure you understand more than anything. That way you actually get the value out of the product that you're paying for. Mm-hmm. I mean, that seems counterintuitive, I guess, from a marketing perspective, but truly it's like what you want to know, that this is what is going to work for you and you want out of that. Okay. Same thing. It just kind of flows into each other. It's like we've structured this very nicely. Okay. Having a knowledgeable and connected content owner. And I want to make a quick clarification here, because whenever I think of content, again, marketing guy, it's like, okay, we're talking about maybe all the articles that are available. Maybe this looks like a database of information, whatever. When we talk about content, can you both just give a quick grounding on like, what is this specifically referring to?
Yeah, this is, your scripts, your tried and true rebuttals that work. This is your compliance items that need to be said on every call, things of that nature.
Got it. Okay, so it's just like whatever is already, maybe it's a script, maybe it's any of the information that you need, maybe it's any of, like you said, the rebuttals, any of that kind of thing.
Frequently asked questions.
Frequently asked question, maybe customer information, depending on the industry that you're in, that kind of thing. Okay, cool. That makes sense. So then when we talk about this in particular, is like, do you have somebody in leadership, or if not in leadership, do they understand what those priorities are? Do they know what the agent workflows actually look like, what they sound like, and not just what you think they are, but what your agents are saying on a regular basis.
Mhm.
Because we all know that sometimes maybe they're going a little off script. Maybe they have done their own thing with it to say like, well, this works better for me or whatever. Does this person actually have the authority to adjust scripts, playbooks, and training content as needed? And I think this has to do with not going through like a bunch of hoops to make those changes.
Mhm.
I don't know if either of you have had an experience to where, like, let's say somebody's onboarded with Balto, we're great, we're getting it set up, and we make a suggestion of like, hey, maybe this playbook would work better if we make an adjustment here. And they're like, well, we have to go and talk to X, Y, and Z before we can do that. Has that come up? I feel like that might be a loaded question.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's important with any meeting that you have, right? It's important to have the right people in that meeting. If you can have the decision makers like in that meeting and not have to have a schedule follow up, obviously that is going to expedite it. Definitely. But the big thing that I think of when I think of a knowledgeable and connected content owner is the biggest issues I've seen historically is if we have a content creator, so someone building out your team's playbooks, what rebuttals, what compliance items, how the call flow should go. If they are too far removed from the actual agents on the call, they sometimes can have this like, in an ideal situation, or this is how like we want this communicated. But if they aren't connected enough with like actually what the call flows look like and how they agents interact with the customer, we sometimes can see if the content is just coming from too high up, it doesn't resonate with the agent and they feel like it's very clunky or it's too formal or not formal enough. And there's sometimes that balance, right, of like, we want to shoot for that ideal, but we also have to think about how is that adoption going to work? How is that translated to the customer? So the best situations we see are typically someone who's high enough up, as you said, to like be able to make those decisions and be willing to like, hey, let's test out a new rebuttal for a week and see how it impacts our bottom line. If it does really great, let's scale it out to everyone. If it still needs some tweaking, our content, especially at Balto, is very iterative because you usually start with something. Let's get them started. This is what they're doing today. But a month from now, you're going to have these insights. You're going to see very easily in transcripts and in coaching opportunities what your best agents are doing. Hey, Joe had an amazing rebuttal we've never thought of before, and it's working. Let's scale that out to everyone. So having someone who's high enough up to being able to make those changes, being able to kind of take on that risk of like trying something new potentially, but also close enough to the agents that they know what they're going through. They've maybe been on the calls before. They were a promoted agent, or they have enough experience of like walking the floor and supporting the team. That's where we really see the biggest impact. Because again, if they're too far removed, there sometimes can be, pushback on adoption from the agents of like, this isn't how this actually happens live on the call, right? And so I think that's the biggest thing when I think of this is having that person who's kind of in the sweet spot, making those decisions, but also close enough to the agents.
Yeah. And I'll also add I think you said it perfectly, Christina. It is such a sweet spot. This is such a unique and pivotal role because to what we just chatted through, they need to be close to the call flow to translate it in a realistic manner for agents. But they also not only need to have the power and influence to make those changes, but they also need to have a deep understanding of what the business goals are, right? Because we know at the end of the day, our content is, pretty set in stone, but we always have goals behind it. What are we driving to, and is our content getting us there? So this person also needs to have a deep understanding of that as well. So it is truly quite a sweet spot to strike.
Yeah, understanding the why behind something. Like, for example, to go back to one of my first customers, appointment setting, home improvement organization, we added a item to their content where it was like setting the expectation of how long the appointment actually takes. Our appointments take 60 to 90 minutes. Does that work for you for this time that we're scheduling? And that got added because they noticed they were sending out their contractors to these appointments that their agents booked. But then the customer, answered the door. They're like, come on in. And they're like, but I have to leave in 10 minutes to go pick up my kid from soccer. And it's like, no, this appointment is going to take 60 to 90 minutes. We need to do measurements. We need to draft a plan for you. And so then they were sending away the contractor. And that cost the company a lot of money because they are sending contractors out to customers that are not prepared for what that actual initial meeting requires. And so their content creator was like, we need to add this into our content to set that proper expectation with our customers so that when we actually send out a contractor, they're able to complete the process. They're able to actually move forward and have a higher likelihood of closing this opportunity. And so I think that was just one direct example where it's like, they were able to take a business thing of like, this is a problem where we are not able to close enough of our appointments that are booked. We want these appointments because they look at their appointment set rate and their appointment close rate, and we need to get that closer together. And so they're able to do that by adding content into the playbook for their agents to make sure they're setting those proper expectations. And so I think that's a kind of an example of Claudia is talking about of having a bigger idea of where the business goals are and where the big ROI is going to make an impact, and then be able to add that content to the agents, reminding them to set that expectation on every call.
Yeah, I think that really hits the nail just in the coffin in and of itself. I think one of the other things too that I want to mention is we talk a lot about like, I guess like in like our messaging, we talk a lot about like, okay, this is all capable with AI. And the biggest piece within that is the power of AI in terms of like getting some call suggestions, being able to look up information quickly, being able to use plain language when trying to like search through a database using like a GPT function, something along those lines. That is only as good as what the information is actually on that back end. If you're not able to consistently update that content, it kind of defeats the purpose of being able to have these tools in general. Like in my mind, that's almost no different than just having like a printed script. It's if you're not bothering to update it, then why would you need this to a certain degree? I don't know if you guys feel otherwise or not, but that just seems like a logical step in my mind.
Yeah, Balto does make it much easier to make those iterations, right? You could very quickly copy and paste from a transcript of a best agent and get it into your content. You're able to ask Balto GPT, what are our best agents doing? How are they handling these objections? And get it like without you having to hunt through every single call to find that insight, be able to pull that out and scale that out. So I think an AI solution can really help with that, but you're absolutely right. Like it can't just create your best practices without your humanity and your experience and your knowledge and what works for your agents and your customers. For example, I have multiple different customers that are in the same use case, but they all have different customers. They all have different specificities of things that make them unique. And that's where oftentimes those golden nuggets come from, is not just like full industry, copy and paste from Google, but how do you differentiate yourself from your competitors? Those are those things that are often like needed from your content and needed from your team in order to like get that out and scale it out to the agents.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things we mentioned earlier, and I think I said I wanted to put a pin on that because it ties into this. Christina, when you were talking about agent adoption, this brings us into our fourth quality, having a clear understanding of agent pain points. Ties in a lot to what we were just talking about. But within that is, do you have an idea of what the top challenges are that your agents face? And again, I think this has a lot of overlap with what we just said. It's not a matter of, do you think you know, based on like maybe like what the business goals are, what your scripts are written down as or whatever, but like actually knowing specifically what are these challenges that they are facing on a regular basis. And along with that is having specific goals for how AI can help them. Are you trying to improve your compliance? Are you trying to improve your coaching? Are you trying to improve call handling? it's not that you have to pick one of those and then you never deviate, but it's like having a clear goal of what pain points you are trying to solve can make all the difference in the world. I feel like I could say that confidently without having to ask for justification, but I will ask for input. Claudia, what do you think?
Yeah. I laugh when I think about this one because there's one thing that a customer once shared with me that I think rings true. And she said, if you're putting crap into a tool, you're going to get crap out of it. Which, all jokes aside, I think is so important to remember. Are you focused in what you're putting into your AI solution? Are you arming your AI solution with things that are going to help your agents with their most common pain points? That's when they're really going to soar. If you're just putting in things that you think could help them, you're probably not going to get the results you're looking for. So being very pointed with how you're using your tool is always going to get you the best results.
Yeah. Oh, no, Christina, please.
One of my favorite quotes from one of our other CSMs on our team is, he always resorts back to like, don't try to boil the ocean. You're never going to be able to boil the ocean, right? And so this is sometimes things that we see with customers that will come in with this kind of goal to boil the ocean, right? They want to like provide every single possible thing that their agents might run into, or try to solve every single problem at one time. And with the analogy, if you try to boil the ocean, you can't. Like, it's going to take forever. But if you scoop out a bucket or even a pot of it, you're going to be able to have that impact much quicker, and actually be able to see that impact. And so I think that's kind of related to this in the sense of, if you really focus on where are the areas where your agents are losing the sale most often, where are the areas where your agents are having to put your customer on hold and reach out to your supervisor, those all impact the customer experience, and with every type of use case. And so, it's so hard in contact center. Sometimes the hardest part for a lot of our customers is just getting the person on the phone, right? Once you've got them on the phone, the hardest part is done. And now you have to build that relationship or build that value or earn their trust or earn them as a returning customer. And so that's where it's most important of like, what are the things that are going to drive the needle the most, and support your agents. I always think of the Balto agent application as like the best assistant for your team when they're live on the call. And so we want to make sure whatever is in that playbook or in that you're providing that assistance to your team, that it's the best stuff. And if everything is important, nothing is important. So like, really think about what are the things that are tripping up your agents the most often, and let's focus on that. And we do see sometimes someone comes in with like, this is the biggest issue. And a month into it, it's no longer an issue because we've been able to drive that behavior. And now, go back to the example I gave earlier. Now the agents, it's their muscle memory to make sure they're setting that proper expectation for the appointment time. And so now we can focus on the next behavior. What is the next thing that's really going to drive that needle for you guys? And so I think knowing what those biggest pain points are and having that as the focus allows you to really make that impact. But it also doesn't mean that those are the only things you're ever going to work on. As soon as you see that behavior, that muscle strengthen, let's go ahead and focus on that next pain point.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, again, going back to our second point here, like having specific goals, that is exactly what we're talking about, where it's like, if you just come in and you're like, I want to improve my calls. It's like, okay, great. We support that vision broadly, but let's work on having to get there. I think that this is part and parcel of the entire AI hype cycle that we've been going through now since 2022, and I think by now a lot of people have realized, whether they're using AI at work or in their personal life or something like that, like, it's not enough to just, go to ChatGPT and say, what should I have for dinner this week? you're not really going to get a lot out of that. But if you say, here's everything I have in my fridge and here's my timeline and everything else, you're probably going to get more specific suggestions on what you can make. That seems to be one of the biggest things that we encounter, especially on the marketing side, whenever we're putting together our messaging, is trying to make sure that we translate what the actual tangible and frankly incredible like opportunities come out of something like this, without giving this false impression that it's like it's just gonna change everything, because that's not where the strength in AI lies. It lies in being able to take these regular mundane things and either do it automatically for you or just make them that much better or get that much more quality out of it. Okay, let's transition to the last quality that we have here: having an AI-ready operation and campaign structures. And this, if you're in the audience, might sound redundant. You're like, I'm here to learn what an AI operation or an AI-ready operation is. How is this a quality in and of itself? I'll tell you. It's having like whatever tools you already have in place, whether it's your IVR, whether it's a call routing system, whatever that is. Do you have those in a well-structured place? This kind of goes back to like the QA program thing, where like if you already have very good defined structures, it makes it that much easier than to translate that into an AI system or add in an AI platform into that to help support it. Do you have campaigns that are segmented enough to allow AI playbooks to be tailored to different call types? I don't want to give a specific example here, but like I do know that there are times where we bring some folks in, and maybe it's been a minute since we've seen this, where they're like, okay, we have one playbook and it handles everything. And I have been given the impression that that is not the best way to do that. Claudia, do you have an example? You're nodding. I can see it, you know.
Yeah, so it's just, I mean, we can do it, right? We can work with it. However, if you want your AI to work as hard as it possibly can, having your call flows segmented off the bat helps a ton, because this is going to allow you to have your AI give more prescriptive content to be surfaced for agents when they need it. More focused coaching insights are surfaced, and you get less of the noise where that happens. That's like, oh yeah, we handle all of this within this call flow, but because of it's this certain type of call, it's not really relevant. So that coaching insight that is relevant for this call, it's not relevant for that call. The AI doesn't know that. It's going to take everything that's in front of it and try to, put it in a nice package and deliver it. So just removing some of that noise from it, you're just going to get much more quality insights surfaced, content surfaced for your agents.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that we talk about a lot, I'm sorry, Christina, I was just going to say that AI thrives on specificity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But I had one customer, it was a while ago, it was a struggle. I mean, I think that they were struggling before even trying to adopt an AI solution, but it kind of highlighted some of those issues that they currently had. So for example, they had one inbound number, and it was for a customer calling in. It was for a technician calling in. It was for an installer calling in. And if you can imagine the call flow of talking to someone who needs support as they are installing a new product versus someone who's going in and making, servicing it, versus a customer calling and having, wanting to purchase your product. Those are very, very different types of call flows. And so we did struggle with them to get, okay, what are the compliant things that need to be said on every single call? What is the kind of call flow? What are the expectations? Since they're so different, if they're talking to someone internally that's an installer versus a customer, very different. But as Claudia was saying, then when you try to pull the insights out of all that huge bucket of mixed calls, it's like, well, they could be better at, active listening or asking better discovery questions, but it's like, okay, well, that would only be for customer calls. Whereas the technician, is it a one call resolution? Are we able to get them the, help support that they need? And so it can get kind of muddied there. And so if they were able to have, a IVR call campaign for technicians, for customers, for their installers, they would be able to much more clearly have more specific insights for each of those examples of like, what can we do to better our customer experience? What can we do to make our technicians' lives easier? What can we do to support our installers, and have that much clearer? It's still possible. We do have the ability to filter things out by keywords, or, put in real-time note taker notes that pull out what type of call it is and then filter from there. So it is still possible. But it's definitely something that you'll want to think about when we look at like what our most successful customers do. Our most successful customers are able to kind of separate out those key call flows to really specialize their AI solution.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, truthfully, it's one of those things where, again, I feel confident in saying a lot of this just like out of the gate. Being able to have these situations already in place just does make the difference. I see we got some comments here saying, we have 11 different playbooks and you're trying to swap between all of them, trying to get the, dynamic prompts triggered at the right time. This is everything that we're talking about right now. Being able to get all these out at the right moment, at the right time is such a big piece of this. I would love to talk more about that just in general. I see we're running up a little bit on time here. But again, being able to talk about where your systems are already in place, where you can translate them, and where they fit is paramount to all of this. The last thing I want to end on here before I transition to our ending slide, which is where we'll do our closeout, is I want to emphasize I personally want to emphasize how great our customer success team is in being able to help navigate these problems. We've put this webinar on to help identify like, hey, here's like some of the top qualities that, we see success with. That does not mean that if you don't have all of these, or if you're struggling in an area, or even if like you're just trying to get any of these off the ground, that does not preclude you from having a tool like Balto or anybody else. And Balto is particularly gifted at actually being able to take these things and make it work and transition in a way that not only supports your business, but supports just the overall adoption of any of these kinds of solutions. So please don't take any of this as us saying like, you're screwed if you don't got it. We got a question. This is a fun one. Christina and Claudio, what would you suggest for a startup? So I imagine you have a small team. Usually Balto works best whenever you have like when I say a larger group of agents, I think we look at like 15 and above. But if you're a small team, you're growing, you're looking into the future of like what this might look like if you bring on more agents. How does that look like putting these best practices in place now?
I would say two answers. One, it might not be the right time for a solution like Balto because we are really focused on, small to medium businesses, even enterprise. But that, even though that's like maybe the initial thought, I do think there is some really great opportunity for a startup organization, because the sooner you start gathering your data into one place, the sooner you can start to pull insights and best practices from that. So if you even start at a smaller level and it's mostly about, I want to collect all of my call transcripts. I want to be able to surface what are things coming up most often when I'm trying to pitch my new startup solution. Even if it's not as focused on the guidance for your agents, because you don't have a ton of agents, there's a lot that you can get from our insights, from capturing those calls and surfacing what's working, what's not currently. So I would say that's my initial thing of like, it's never too early to start getting all your data in one place, because then that's where you can really start to pull insights over time.
Yeah. Same thought as Christina. I imagine at a startup point in any business's timeline, you're probably just trying to look to gain visibility into what the heck is happening on all of your calls. So starting to implement some of these strategies will set you up really nicely to take on an AI tool, even if it is just starting to like be able to gather exactly what Christina said, your insights over time, so you can quickly understand and digest a large amount of data from a large amount of calls into like, okay, what's working and what's not, as you might be in the infancy stages of a lean and mean team. Having a tool like this is going to help you get there.
Yeah. We have another comment here from Lester saying that, like, you know, if you're able to track one person first, get your stats, and then create parameters. I think like we've done something similar to that before, where it's like, okay, let's pick a handful of our top performing agents, see what's going on here, and then try and scale that out. I'm not sure if that's exactly what you're talking about, Lester, but I know that that's like a tried and true tactic that we've used quite a bit in the past. Okay, we are at time. I'm going to wrap this up. Claudia, Christina, thank you both for being here. I really do appreciate it. Thank you and the rest of the customer success team at Balto for all the insights into this and allowing us to even be able to put on this webinar and like the knowledge sharing in general. So thank you both. For everybody here with us today, thank you. I appreciate it very much. You will get a copy of the recording later on. That way you can go back and check any of this. We got some stuff in the tank that you'll be getting afterwards as well if you've registered. If you are ready to take a look at Balto for your organization, you can scan that QR code right there to book some time with a member of our sales team to get a custom idea of what that could look like with your org. If you're not quite ready for that, but instead you just want to stay ahead of what we're working on at Balto, see what we're talking about, get a couple of materials from us, you can scan the other QR code there to subscribe. We have a newsletter that we are working on. You might also just get some other updates from us as we go along. So thank you everybody for being here. I hope you enjoyed your time today. I hope you learned something. And we will hopefully see you next time. Have a great day, everyone.
Thanks, Justin.
Mm-hmm.